Oh, I better cut down that review a lot because I think I just talked and didn't say anything. Hi everyone, Kate here, and today I'm not actually doing the video I planned to do. You may have noticed I skipped last week. My grandmother had a big 95th birthday party. It was so much work. And I just ran out of time last week. I couldn't get everything done and do a video. And then this week, yeah, can't talk. I'm getting like, I had two possible recipes. I figured, I'll make two different things, and then if one doesn't turn out, I'll post the other. Except neither of them turned out. I have a beetroot blush that I'm working on reformulating. I promised my Patreons that I was going to do this beetroot blush recipe. It sounds really, really interesting. The only problem is the first trial went, not quite moldy, but bad. It's not the kind of thing you want to put on your face. And then my backup recipe was that headache cologne, which I think I mentioned a few videos ago that I was going to try out this headache cologne. And I was fully prepared for it not to work. I thought, oh, it should be a fun thing to try. I wasn't quite prepared for how much it burns. Apparently. Now, I've never used menthol in my recipes before, so I wasn't up to date on the usage amounts, but it's more than double, like the absolute maximum usage rate. And I tried it and my eyes were watering. My forehead was like beet red. And then afterwards, partly I think because it's alcohol based, my skin was like puckered. So I'm not sharing that one this week. I'm going to try to reformulate it with I like the smell of it. It actually smells quite nice. It sort of smells like Halls or Vicks Vapor Rub or something like that. But I am going to try to reformulate it in a less potent form. It didn't actually help with the headache either. So anyway, I had to do an impromptu video for this week's video. I'm really tired. I've been out all day. I am working on becoming an antiques vendor at some... I've been checking out a few different, I say local malls. The one I'm thinking about is actually an hour away, like an hour drive. So, but I've been going around checking out different malls, getting prices. I used to be a full-time mathematics tutor, but since getting ill, that's something I kind of had to take a step back from, and I'm kind of looking for some sort of new direction to turn in now that I'm feeling better is a bit of a stretch, but I'm at the point now where I can take on something, but it needs to be fairly flexible. So I'm looking for flexible work, and one of those things that occurred to me was being an antiques dealer. They don't make much money, but it's something that I really enjoy, and it's something that I think I can actually do. So I was out driving around. I'll get to what this video is about in a moment, but we're going to have a story time first. I was out all afternoon at I was checking out antique malls, and I was buying some stock. I bought a huge, part of them's for me, but I bought a huge pile of antique knitting patterns and knitting magazines from anywhere from the Victorian through to about the 1980s. Most of them are sort of in the 1930s, 40s kind of range. There are so many great patterns. I'm going to take out the ones that I think I'll actually use, and then the rest I'm going to try selling them in my booth. I don't have a booth yet, but when I get a booth, I'll try selling some of them in the booth. Some of them I might post online. So if you're interested in 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, later knitting patterns and crochet patterns. I got a lot of crochet patterns, and I'm not a big crocheter, so most of those I'll probably pass along. But let me know. I will talk about that more when it actually happens, and if I do get a booth, I will definitely take some video of it. All that was to say that I'm pretty tired because I've been out all day, but I had to film something because I couldn't go 2 weeks without a video. So I've decided to share some of my historical resources. When I shared the books that I got for Christmas or something, I was sort of, I don't want to share anything too rare because I know people can't get a hold of them, but everyone's like, no, that's okay. If something's rare, share it anyway. So I'm going to share some books today that are they're not super rare. They're not still in print though either, as far as I'm aware. Two of the books for sure are available from Open Library. You can sort of borrow them digitally. if you can't find a hardcover, like a print copy. And then some of them, I think there are some versions of some of the things I'm going to sell. Sorry, antiques on the brain. There are digital copies of some of the other ones I'm going to share online. You can also find usually these books at used bookstores. I've come across all of them more than once, so they're not super rare editions, but they aren't something that you can just go to Chapters and buy. So the first book I'm going to share is a wonderful resource for anybody interested in old movies. Mine doesn't have a cover on it, but this is The Great Movie Stars, The Golden Years. So this is published in 1970, and it is basically a mini biography of nearly every old Hollywood star you can think of. There are one or two exceptions to that, but virtually everybody who was a major player in the early days of Hollywood is in this book. If you're interested in specific film, they have it all categorized by film back in the index there, and it's all alphabetical by Hollywood star. It varies how much they write about each star, kind of depending on how prolific they were as an actor or an actress, and how famous they were. The more famous they were, the more pages they get. I guess there's more to write about in those situations. So each one has their name, and then a brief biography including virtually every film they ever did, and pictures of the stars. There's some really great pictures in here of the old Hollywood stars. So this is a really interesting resource. Whenever I'm watching an old movie, I actually keep this down by my DVD collection, and if I'm watching an old movie and I want to know more about the person starring in it, I look them up on this book. I've only maybe once or twice not found the star that I was looking for in this book. The only thing is, because this book was written in 1970, some of the stars were still alive, so you don't get a full lifetime biography, because some of them were still making movies, or you just don't get the full story just because of when it was written. But if you're looking for somebody from the 20s and the 30s, this is a really, really interesting resource. Through to about the 1950s, it's the golden years. So I'm not sure what they count as the golden years. Well, let's look up a 1950 star and see if they're in here. Let's look up Marilyn Monroe. Okay, that'll tell me if 1950 stars are in here. Okay, Marilyn Monroe's not in here, so this is more... Most of these people I'm seeing are sort of 30s, 40s, so... Whoa, I'm dropping stuff. I wouldn't count anybody from the 1950s, so we're talking the 20s, 30s, 40s is what they're considering the golden years of film and... I guess not television. I was going to say film and television, but no. Duh! You can find these at used bookstores for $10, $20 usually. This one is available from Open Library to borrow. You can't print it or anything, but you can have a look at it if you can't find a copy and are curious what it's like. If I can find any copies on Etsy, I will link them. I did a brief search earlier and I didn't see it. I have seen them on there before. It is something that pops up from time to time. Okay, and the next book is also movie related. This is a new one to me. I just bought this one, so I haven't actually finished it. I got my bookmark in there. But this is The Movie Musical, From Vitaphone to 42nd Street. This is a really interesting concept. This is a history book. It was all about the birth of the movie musical, but it is told through excerpts from Photoplay magazine. And so it's all the articles, I think virtually all the articles from this period that relate to the birth of musicals. So anything about virtually any musical during that time. So it starts from anything before 1928, which there's a little bit, but talkies obviously weren't a big deal back then. There were... Now, The Jazz Singer was not the first film with sound. I should mention that just as a little tidbit, because a lot of people think it was. There were earlier sound things, but it didn't become a big deal till the Jazz Singer. So it's categorized in before 1928, 1926 to 28, 1929, 1930, 1931, 1932, and 1933. So it only goes up to the early 30s. This was published in 1975. And at the beginning of each chapter, you get a little bit about the era. So you get a bit of background information about the era that you're reading about, which is good for context. Like, there's some stuff that if I didn't know the historical context surrounding it, I might not have gotten as much out of it. But I really like first-hand sources when it comes to researching the past. I like reading actual books that were written in the past, and actual magazines, rather than reading modern interpretations of the past, which is what a lot of like sort of history books tend to be. So this is kind of an interesting combination of both. You get the modern historical blah blah at the beginning of each chapter, and then you actually get the real historical sources afterwards, and it's all done by year. And again, there's gorgeous pictures in here. It's all black and white, but photoplay was black and white, so that's what it was. So lots of combination of texts, articles, big pictures. Really interesting book. I got this at a antique store a couple weeks ago. It was only $10. So again, this is one that's available from the open library to borrow. No printing. No printing, but you can borrow it if you can't find a copy. But if you're interested in early musicals, this is a really interesting resource. I'm quite enjoying it. So the last thing that I'm going to mention is actually my background here, and I did consider doing a background tour, and there is a background tour coming. I've been promising that for like a year, but I am doing a background tour at some point. You can't see it, but after my grandmother's party, as I mentioned, she turned 95, huge party, we were tidying like crazy, and there was not time to deal with everything, and stuff just got shoved in my room. So what you can't see is the fact that I'm sitting on a stool, but I cannot move because I'm surrounded by stuff. So I couldn't actually get the camera tripod close enough to film the background today. But there is a background tour coming. Getting off topic again. But what I wanted to share was these that I have here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. I'll just grab one out. But these are an absolute favorite resource of mine. These are catalog reprints. These were reprinted in, I think it was the 70s or the 80s. So this one is, copyrighted in Roman numerals. Okay, math time. 19, L is 50, 60, 70, 71. Okay. So this is 1971. Some of these I think were done up until the 80s, but most of them I think were reprinted in the 70s. My dad actually owned a bookstore back in the 1970s, and he remembers selling these. So these catalog reprints, I have, as I mentioned, 4 of them. I have 3 Sears and 1 Eaton's, I believe is... Yeah, 3 Sears, 1 Eaton's catalogs. So mine range from 1901 to 1927. I love these. Oh, these things are great. You see these at used bookstores and antique markets fairly frequently. These are not hard to find. I have the full-size ones. You do sometimes see like mini ones as well. Usually $15, $20 is pretty average for around here anyway for the cost of these. These are a fabulous resource for a variety of purposes. Fashion is the most obvious one. It's kind of interesting to see how the focus of the catalogs shift over time too. The later ones are much more into fashion than the early ones. We have great fashion prints here, and you can, they're mostly in black and white, but you can read about like what colors they were, what fabrics they were. So if you're interested in like recreating historical looks, this is a fantastic resource. And as I said, I have one from the 1920s that I use all the time if I'm putting together an outfit, if I need sort of inspiration. The good thing about catalogs like this is that they were aimed sort of middle class. So you're seeing what real women would have been wearing rather than like the fancy fashion plates in magazines. This gives you a little more everyday look at fashions from the era. They are also good for furniture. I like looking at, oh, they got houseplans in this one. It's so cute. I want it. Oh, I got a bunch of houses. But anyway, you can see sort of decor inspiration. There's a bathroom right there, and there's sofas, and I love historical decor. So great. So this is a great resource for that. They're also great for seeing what was available during the period. A recent example is I recently bought a antique sewing machine. There'll be more about that in a future episode when I finally get around to finishing my sewing room redo. But I was looking at some antique sewing machines in antique stores that didn't have dates on them. And I was curious about what era they were from. So one good way to do research with stuff like that is to look it up in the catalog and see were they selling similar stuff in that era. Now, my sewing machine's got a number on it. It's a Singer. I could just look it up in a Singer database. But I was looking at some other ones, non-Singer machines, that don't have as much information available about them. And I was going through all the catalogs, looking at what was available. It was really interesting seeing what types of sewing machines were available, the cabinets they put them in, the range of things that were available, the prices originally. Very interesting. And, you know, for example, if you want your bedroom to look Victorian, and you want to know, well, what kind of bed would be historically appropriate? This is kind of going back to home decor. Pages and pages of beds. You can perhaps not buy an antique piece, but buy something that's historically appropriate by looking up in the catalog what would have been available and then picking something that looks similar. It's a great way to get a historical look. And they're fun to read. They're so much fun to read. All the prices, all the different things available. Sometimes I like just flipping through and fantasy shopping. Like you can't actually still order any of this stuff. Sears isn't even around anymore. But it is so much fun to go through and think, oh, if I was a woman in the Victorian era, what would I be ordering? And putting together a little fantasy shopping list. The 1920s one's cool too. Let me get out that one. There's so many more that I don't have too. As I said, I have 4 of them. And I've been using these in videos a lot lately, actually. I'm on the lookout for more of these because I use them all the time. I use them in my 1920s one. I use them in my bra video, my sewing historical, was it my sewing historical bra or just about bras? I think it was the one on how to look more flattering in 1920s clothing. I think it was that one that I used some clips from here to show what undergarments were available during the time. And I definitely used it in my powder video recipe. I picked a catalog that was close enough in years to that article that I was reading. And I showed some things out of the catalog. So what was available at that time in terms of powder. So these are such an interesting resource. As I said, $15, $20 is probably average. Sometimes you can find them closer to the $10 mark. Lately, I've seen them a little more expensive, like $25, $30 mark. I've seen a lot of people selling them online in pieces, which just... that kind of sums up my feelings about people who destroy historical resources. But people use them for scrapbooking, which is shameful. But I know there's a whole bunch more I don't have. I know that for a fact because I used to work at a museum, and the museum had a whole shelf full of catalog reprints, which the archivist and the museum staff used for research purposes. And I had a lot of free time when I was working at the museum, so I would spend hours poring over them. They were So fascinating. Highly recommend. Well, I think that's it for this week. My voice is getting a little sore. As I said before, I was out all day today, so I don't know what that is. Bunny ears or something. Anyways, I should probably go because I'm absolutely exhausted. So hopefully I can get this video edited. I haven't spoken very clearly and I apologize for that, but as I mentioned, very tired. But something's better than nothing. I'm just gonna go. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to comment, like, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you guys next time. Bye! This video is made possible through the generous support of my Patreon members. Thank you.